Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Throne of Steel based on novel. So let's start. The Holy War had gone on for close to 2 years, and both parties' consumption was very large. Originally, the demon army seemed to be rather more restful, only occasionally launching some symbolic offenses. The southeastern fort took advantage of that to rest its troops, but for some reason no one knew, the demon army once again made an all-out offense 1 week ago, and this attack was even fiercer than the past ones. Immediately, all the powerhouses of the southeastern mountain pass had to join the battlefield, and an unstoppable battle followed then. The whole fort was now full of the stench of blood. Wang Yuan was still standing on the first row of the battlefield, defending the walls. Compared to the time of the Holy War, her shield and blade had gained a dense layer of blood color. That not only was due to piercing the enemies, but furthermore, it carried a fierce aggressivity, born from countless slaughters. Wang Yuan's appearance wasn't much different from before, but her manners had undergone an earth-shattering change. She was extremely cold and steady. Even in the midst of slaughters, her appearance didn't change at all despite that her whole body was suffused with reeking blood. Even those veterans from the warrior temple couldn't compare with her fierce and ruthless moves. And Wang Yuan's cultivation made rapid progress. From the continuous slaughter, she accumulated a large amount of killing intent, and by some unknown method she made continuous breakthroughs thanks to the stimulation of her gigantic divine soul shield. Now, her cultivation had already exceeded Zhong Fangfang, whose breakthrough to the 7th step happened a long time before. Her dedication moved every higher up of the warrior temple. 5th rank of the 7th step, that was the level currently reached by Wang Yuan's internal spiritual energy. Adding to that the terrifying weapons of slaughter in her hand, she would definitely fully deserve to be called a slaughter god if such an election were to take place. From the start of the Holy War to the current time, she had never missed any battle. At most, she could sometimes remain fighting in the fort's area for 5 days and 5 nights, before fainting due to exhausting her physical force and being carried away. After coming back to her senses, she would, regardless of anyone's obstruction, stand back on the southeastern mountain pass. By now, Wang Yuan was acclaimed as a hero for the southeastern fort since long before, as well as an idol for the overwhelming majority of the warriors. Zhong Fangfang didn't have his own demon hunt squad anymore, and had been following Wang Yuan's side silently all the time. He had tried many times to convince her, and many times jumped in front of her to block the enemies for her sake, yet Wang Yuan had never listened to his persuasion. At last, Zhong Fangfang's attitude also came to change gradually. His feelings actually didn't weaken from seeing her determination, but instead became even stronger. And furthermore, he also started to get influenced by Wang Yuan, changing his ways from a guardian knight to a retribution knight, achieving his share of frantic kills, although quite slower than Wang Yuan. At the moment, Zhong Fangfang was standing beside her, his armor covered in multiple colors since long before. The heavy sword he had in one hand was dedicated to killing the enemy, and the shield in his other hand was entirely dedicated to blocking the attacks aimed at Wang Yuan. The two of them were walking their way out of mountains of corpses. If not for the protection of the spiritual stoves at their disposal and the meticulous watch of the warrior temple's higher-ups, who knew how many times they would have already died in the battlefield by now. 3 immense demonic bears, who had been catapulted directly to the fortress, went after the two of them, waving large hammers, and met with Wang Yuan's attacks. Bang! The first demonic bear's attack met with the parry of Zhong Fangfang's shield as a second one was met with his heavy sword. With a stuffy groan, Zhong Fangfang spit some blood. He had already stopped counting the number of times he sustained such wounds, and even started to grow accustomed to it. In a violent clash, the 2 demonic bears were forced away. Everything Zhong Fangfang did was in order to stall for time for Wang Yuan's sake. The divine soul shield smashed the 2 hammers, and the result that followed conformed with Bloodstorm's name. On the fortress, another carnage followed. Even with the demonic bear's great violence, the other 2 couldn't help but display some fear at the sight of their partner being cut off by Bloodstorm. In panic, they lost the will to keep advancing as they didn't dare confront the slaughterer Wang Yuan was. The gigantic divine soul shield supported on the ground, Wang Yuan took large gasps for breath. Aiming an almost blood-colored look at Zhong Fangfang, he nodded lightly to her. Zhong Fangfang then forced a smile. "I'm all right. You go take a little break. I will be standing on guard." Wang Yuan remained silent. Many times, camaraderie didn't require words, but engraved feelings. Right at this time, a golden pillar of light appeared out of nowhere, encompassing Wang Yuanyuan inside. Then came another one landing on Zhong Fangfang. A dense warmth and very pleasurable light rapidly provided nourishment for their bodies. In the midst of sweet sounds, 2 golden angels appeared out of nowhere, flapping their sets of 6 wings, and held Zhong Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan from behind. They had already been fighting on the southeastern mountain pass for 3 days and 3 nights, and were quite tired and wounded. Their spiritual energies were already close to collapse, so this time, these 2 powerful healing spells were no less than the perfect help they needed. Both their physical force and spiritual energy recovered at astonishing speeds. Most of all, Zhong Fangfang was greatly shocked to see how pure the golden radiance shining upon Wang Yuanyuan was. Aside from a golden color, that image of angels faintly let out a pure and holy aura. The blood color filling Wang Yuanyuan's eyes unexpectedly disappeared rapidly on her embrace. Which was to say, she was not only healing her wounds, but furthermore soothing her soul full of murderous spirit. This was the first time Zhong Yuanyuan saw such a use of angel's embrace, healing both the body and the spirit. Subconsciously, Zhong Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan raised their head, to see 4 figures rushing to them from the sky. The 2 knights in the lot were the users of angel's embrace. As they landed swiftly on the ground, a large amount of fireballs came out from the fire cloud crystal staff of the mage clad in fire red color, getting rid of the demons in a large area, be they on the ground or in the skies. These blue fireballs produced a dense smell of charcoal, obviously from the demon soldiers' scorching. Some rather stronger ones escaped this fate, including the previous 2 demonic bears that had just escaped from the side, but they all died in the midst of grey flickers of light. Almost within the time of one breath, the portion of the wall assigned to Zhong Fangfang and Wang Yuanyuan became a lot more tranquil. Han Yu stepped forward, waving his heavy shield, which blocked in front of him. Lin Xin arrived onto his back, without stopping the attacks from his staff in the slightest. The powerful offensive strength of a fire mage came into full display. In front of his powerful magic onslaught, no demons were, for the moment, able to approach them. Han Yu, Lin Xin, Kia. Wang Yuanyuan had a hoarse voice, full of disbelief. Ever since the start of the Holy War, this was the first time the hands gripping her weapons trembled. Yuanyuan, I'm here too. From behind the golden foundation armor's mask came Houchen's voice. Clang clang. The weapons on Wang Yuanyuan's hands were dropped at the same time as her body swayed, on the edge of collapsing, but Zhong Fangfang hastened to support her. Boss, you guys finally came. On the southeastern fort, Wang Yuanyuan, that tough beyond compare and bloodily attacking bloody war goddess, actually lost control of her feelings and burst into tears. Long Houchen stepped forward and gave him a vigorous hug, without care for the bloodstains on her. We arrived. And now, we have to go gather with Yinga and Sima. The 64th Commander Grade Demon Hung Squad is reforming. No, the day it will reform, it will be at the King grade. Wang Yuanyuan was empty of words, as her tears flowed uncontrollably. Because of her lack of confidence, she was probably the one who had the most painful times in the team. For close to 2 years, she struggled to the brink of death almost every day, finding breakthroughs in desperate battles. This was so that she wouldn't be left behind by the others, for the day they would be able to reform their team. Long Houchen came, and Kia, Han Yu, Lin Xin as well. They haven't forgotten me, and they came for me. So our Demon Hunt squad is finally reforming. This instant, Wang Yuanyuan felt totally emptied of force, finally relaxing her stretched mental state, unable to control her emotions anymore. Long Houchen returned her to Zhong Fangfang's arms. Brother Zhong, thank you. Zhong Fangfang sighed lightly. All I did regarding Yuanyuan was only for my own sake. I haven't been able to protect my comrades, so if I am not even able to protect her, then I can only follow her in that fate. Long Houchen said next, while Yuanyuan is unstable emotionally, I'll be leaving her to Brother Zhong's protection. Let's have a chat after this battle is over. As he raised his right hand, rippling light appeared in his grasp. The extremity of his foot tapping onto the ground, Long Houchen arrived at Han Yu's side in one movement. By simply observing the situation, one could see that Lin Xin and Caia were on the offense, with Han Yu standing on defense. As long as no enemy powerhouse over the 8th step came, this defensive front would hardly be broken. Long Houchen drew back rapidly, reached Han Yu's back, and then started chanting resonantly. Ever since coming out of seclusion, Long Houchen often became closer to a light elemental mage. Furthermore, his light elemental spells were far more powerful than Mag's. The affinity of a god's chosen one with his element made him frequently able to unleash magic far above his own rank. At the time he studied in the cave, Long Houchen focused mostly on defensive guardian knight abilities and healing ones. By relying on his great advantages as a god's chosen one, he could even maintain a domain for some time, just like a holy knight of the ninth step. This was also where those few forbidden spells of light element came from. During the time of his chant, the golden light on Long Houchen's body kept gaining in intensity. In the air, large amounts of light essence started to resonate with him. But still, he had a very disappointed look on his face. Just as he expected, the same incantation won't always show the same power every time. Luck couldn't stand on his side forever. Long Houchen was chanting for sacred rain. But this time, he couldn't gather all the light essence, and didn't give birth to the previous miraculous scene. It only ended up as a rain of light. A brilliant golden pillar of light appeared from nowhere, illuminating the whole surrounding area. Although rain of light was by far incomparable with sacred rain, in the end it remained a healing spell of the 8th step, sufficient to cover a circumference of 1,000 square meters. In its range, all the warriors and mags in the southeastern mountain pass were very effectively healed, and the demons let out some greenish smoke, as their offense greatly weakened. Still, rain of light was in the end only a rain of light. Its area of effect, healing efficiency, and duration were all by far incomparable to the supra-forbidden spell Sacred Rain. So the demon offense was only slightly contained, yielding a short time for resting to the soldiers. After the healing, rain of light was already over, and the demon army continued its charge in tides. Lin Xin had drawn back slightly. The continuous offensive spell greatly consumed his spiritual energy, and although he had the boost from the fire dragon wings, he required some time of adjustment to recover his spiritual energy. Without his powerful magic attacks, the demons immediately continued their charge against the fortress. At their vanguard were actually some of the Luke clan's invisible demons. They couldn't drill through the tough walls, but aimed their sharp-pointed arms forward without hesitation. Han Yu responded calmly to these enemies, not greedy for achievements. Both hands holding his shield, he encompassed the surroundings with his senses, perfectly defending Long Houchen and Lin Xin behind him. Holy light imbued shield, shield charge, divine obstruction, and shield wall. Several great shield defensive abilities were used by Han Yu, who stood unmoving, yet stopped the advance of all demons in a range of 20 meters. Like a streak of grey light, the light of death, Kia moved forth. Everywhere she passed, even the tenacious demonic bear had no way to resist in the slightest. The sharpness of the sickle of the god of death could only be described as terrible, and further adding that to her godly speed, all the holes in Han Yu's defense on the sidelines were perfectly complemented. Long Houchen still didn't participate in the attack, releasing one guardian knight spell after another. Faith Halo, Guardian's Favor, Toughness Halo, Spiritual Gathering Halo, Sacred Halo. Every Halo-type ability far surpassed ordinary knights when released by him, covering an extremely large area. He could even throw the area in a certain direction, to let it spread and cover the other sides of the fortress. Due to his series of light spells, almost a third of the warriors in the fort were boosted by some halo. Although this series of halos didn't provide an enormous boost, it had the properties of the light element, not only greatly boosting the allies' morale, but also increasing both the soldiers' offensive strength and survivability. In the lot, the most remarkable one was Sacred Halo. This was one of the most useful ones in battles against demons. In its area, all the warriors' attacks gained properties of sacred light. This tremendously increased their killing power against demons, and upon entering its range, the strength of any enemy of the darkness attribute immediately plummeted. For sure, compared to defense and boosts, Long Houchen's offense was far better. But he was not in a situation of one against one, or a decisive struggle of one against many. A Guardian Knight's usefulness in the battlefield was far beyond compare with a Retribution Knight's one. The advantages he had as God's chosen one made the boost provided by each of Long Houchen's ability at least 3 times more effective than an ordinary knight's. These amplifying techniques, with a low consumption, were almost uninterruptedly fired. For a moment, a third of the area covered by the southeastern fort was enveloped in a drizzling golden splendor. After a short time of recovery, Lin Xin also returned to battle, launching batteries of attacks. As far as his Heart of Fire's flames reached, blue seas of fire greatly restricted the demon's advance and attacks. And at the time his full-powered attacks came, Han Yu and Caia would vanish to the sidelines, recovering some spiritual energy. The mutual understanding between them was already extremely deep. Even after having separated for so long, their joint attacks were still that harmonious. This mutual understanding came from their absolute confidence. This was especially due to Long Houchen's presence, acting as the soul of the team, enabling the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad to make powerful moves without the slightest fear. Clang. Sounds of metal rang on Long Houchen's left side, accompanied with an excited shout, Kia, just focus on the right side and leave the left side to me. Long Houchen inclined his head sideways, to see that Wang Yuanyuan had joined his side. Those metallic sounds of collision came from the gigantic divine soul shield and bloodstorm. Yuanyuan, you, Long Houchen said in surprise. Immersed in the halos liberated by Long Houchen, Wang Yuanyuan's body was enveloped by a layer of golden gloss. Boss, how could I be left out? Did you know? I have been waiting for our reunion to fight alongside each other for far too long. Having received the healing from Angel's embrace, Wang Yuanyuan recovered some of her strength. She was the one with the greatest mental change. The arrival of Long Houchen and the others admittedly enabled her to loosen the deep pressure she put on herself, but also aroused an inexhaustible combativeness in her. Being able to fight alongside her most familiar companions was an absolute happiness in her eyes. Seeing Long Houchen and the other four coordinate with tacit understanding on the front, how could she rest peacefully behind? After recovering mentally for a few minutes, she immediately joined Long Houchen's side. Long Houchen didn't stop Wang Yuanyuan, he knew that he had no way to stop her. Okay. Then let's fight alongside. Yuanyuan, activate your chains. Yes, Captain. Wang Yuanyuan shouted aloud. At the time of their initial separation, the members of the 64th Commander Grade Demon Hunt Squad all voluntarily deactivated the soul-binding chains, because they didn't know what they would encounter in this time of separation. No one wanted to implicate their comrades. After reuniting, the soul-binding chains connected one after another, symbolizing them reuniting as a whole. After reuniting, all the members of their squad had become far stronger than before. Their experiences of life and deaths made them treasure this team all the more, while their experience and strength grew dramatically. 5 of the 7 were already reunited, and the strength of their team was regained for the most part. With Wang Yuanyuan covering the left side and putting on a powerful display of might with her 2 weapons, Long Houchen was sitting in the center of the formation, putting his whole heart into using his buffing magic. The higher-ups from the warrior temple had noticed this change since long before. The sudden appearance of these 4 to join the battlefield astonished them greatly, but, because of the dense holy light attribute emanating from Long Houchen and Han Yu, they didn't block them. The sight of Long Houchen's Golden Foundation armor then greatly surprised them. The Golden Foundation Knights were the core of the Knight Temple's force. Unless it's for some important mission, they won't easily leave the dragon-resisting mountain pass. So how come a Golden Foundation Knight suddenly led a group to the southeastern mountain pass? The war gods and war emperors under Qiu Yonghao's lead all stood opposite to the 8 great demon gods. Seeing Long Houchen release one boosting spell after another, they couldn't help but secretly feel high praises. That's a Guardian Knights. Among all vocations, Guardian Knights were of extreme use in the battlefield. They could defend, support, attack, and even heal. A powerful all-round Guardian Knight could totally reverse the tides. Qiu Yonghao and the powerhouses from the warrior temple were floating in the sky, overlooking the situation distinctly. Ever since the arrival of Long Houchen's group with the launch of Rain of Light, the pressure on the southeastern mountain pass had visibly alleviated. The demon's offense was greatly suppressed. The great assistance of these few was analyzed the most deeply by Qiu Yonghao, in his capacity as chief of the warrior temple. Knight, mage, assassin, knight, warrior. Wait, Wang Yuanyuan is actually coordinating with them without a sound. Could they be from that demon hunt squad of hers? Reaching this point, Qiu Yonghao couldn't help but feel deep shock. In his memories immediately resurged the time when a youngster left the sword intense deep secrets inside the warrior temple. Wait, could the Golden Foundation armor using non-stop boosting spells be him? So he actually progressed to such an extent in less than 2 years, recalling that conference that took place less than 2 years ago in the Temple Alliance, Qiu Yonghao couldn't help but feel complex feelings arise. What's the role of a Guardian Knight in the battlefield? That's not defense nor healing, much less attack. It's to prolong the lives of his comrades in arms as much as possible. As long as you understand this, and manage it, you will be a truly qualified Guardian Knight. His grandfather's words reverberating in his mind, Houchen's use of the halos became more and more adept, his halos flowing together with increased efficiency. The recovery from the Golden Foundation armor, as well as his own, gave him an almost unending supply of spiritual energy to fully use these halo-type spell, reaching at most the 5th step. In terms of pure speed, although he was still below a pure mage such as Lin Xin, his range was far beyond compare with a mage of same rank, or even Lin Xin. Hearing Long Houchen's words, Crocell raised his eyebrows, and contrary to expectations, smiled. Young knight of the 8th step, you're attempting to challenge a mighty opponent of the 9th step. I know what you are thinking, that I can't have the assistance of my demon god pillar here, right? Even so, how could you be a match against me? You have only one option, to serve or to die. Saying that, Crocell raised the long blade in his right hand, and the pitch-black edge of his blade was launched at Long Houchen. This blade wasn't moving very fast, but the instant it struck out, Long Houchen only felt as if locked by Crocell, and couldn't avoid the blow no matter which way he tried to evade. Crocell's eyes had already turned deep blue. The demon god of clear vision was not just talk. In time of battle, his clear vision technique had crucial uses. It was able to create decisive opportunities against the enemy, as well as predict his next moves. Under those conditions, his attacks were undoubtedly very effective. None of the 72 demon gods was a simple character, whether in strength or intelligence. Crocell's attack aimed at intimidating, as well as probing. He was unclear on Long Houchen's precise level of cultivation. Long Houchen drew back slightly, and his body abruptly traced an arc, wielding the divine snail shield of sun and moon with both his arms. A resonant buzzing sound spread out on the whole first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Both Long Houchen's feet slid backwards, only stopping on the edge of the tower. As the divine snail shield spread glitters of intense orange light, Long Houchen's body flashed in light, as the surroundings shook continuously under the flashes of different colors. After bearing this attack, Long Houchen's face was covered in astonishment. Indeed, he sensed that Crocell's internal spiritual energy seemed just above 100,000, definitely not reaching the second rank of the 9th step. But even at such a level of cultivation, relying on divine obstruction actually turned out to be totally insufficient. His body still glowed with the light of bright vengeance, the ability formed along with divine obstruction to reflect some damage back to the enemy, but the soul-binding chain's light also spread. In other words, he had been wounded. Although they weren't deep, despite the divine snail shield's defense and damage sharing with the others, he still sustained some light wounds. From this could be seen the dominance of Crocell's strength. Little fly, you dare show such insolence. Crocell didn't stop at that. After the first strike came off smoothly, the long blade chopped at Houchen, drawing a pitch-black brilliance onto the sky, which aimed straight at Long Houchen like a bolt of thunder. His blade's edge seems to be using an ability similar to Spiritual Highland. Long Houchen determined instantly from the first blow. What he didn't know at all was that in the demon's ranks, every demon god, without his own clan, certainly had far less influential strength, but the demon god emperor encouraged them, frequently giving them the priority for some powerful equipment. Therefore, individual demon gods had comparatively better practical fighting strength. And although the demon god of clear vision Crocell's strength was ranked rather low among the individual demon gods, he couldn't possibly have obtained the 49th seat without sufficient strength. He was a real powerhouse of the 9th step, and furthermore, had the clear vision technique at his disposal. If his cultivation reached the point of being able to unleash a domain, maybe he could rank among the top 36. In this probing, Long Houchen immediately suffered a loss. However, as a god's chosen one, he naturally couldn't let himself continuously suffer losses. Seeing the second attack of the enemy arrive, Long Houchen's figure strangely disappeared without warning nor trace. Bang. Crocell's attack landed directly on the Tower of Eternity, causing a series of buzzes. He couldn't help but blank out. Even with the clear vision technique, he actually couldn't tell out how Long Houchen had gone off. Long Houchen obviously couldn't possibly teleport himself back to Shingmordalu. A time of adjustment was required before teleporting back, and besides, he could absolutely not leave Crocell here by himself. Otherwise, if he explores and finds out about the deep secrets of the Tower of Eternity, and manages to obtain something, things could become a real pain. In a flash of light, Long Houchen reappeared in his previous location, and this time, the hill-sized five-headed Haoyue was alongside him. Outside from the teleportation to the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen also had his blood contract pact with Haoyue. In the battle against Crocell inside the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen's greatest reliance was the possibility to show his full abilities without any worries. Even if he didn't manage to kill Crocell, the latter still had no way to escape the Tower of Eternity. Graw Haoyue's 5 heads snarled together, and deep purple intent rushed forth from him, shrouding the opposite Crocell. Immediately, the previously proud-looking demon god of clear vision lost his head as if facing a monster, already full of shock. You're. Immediately, he became unable to finish his sentence. Long Houchen obviously understood that the opponent had recognized his identity. Recovering the divine snail shield, he pointed his right hand forward and immediately let golden light surge out from him. Yating charmingly appeared in front of him, and in her hands were held up 2 heavy swords. Master. Yating bowed slightly, holding the 2 heavy swords out before Long Houchen. Long Houchen took up the aria of the Goddess of Light, and then blue rain hibiscus of light. Immediately, his manners made an earth-shattering change, with mighty sword intent bursting from him without reserve. His aura was far greater than before. You_that_human, _that_human. Crocell stabilized his posture after drawing 10 or so meters back. He tenaciously stared at Haoyue, bursting with great fury. Immediately, he became totally unable to maintain his precious calm. The demon gods succeeded each other through many generations, but not all memories were passed between them. The stronger the demon god, the more of the past memories he'd inherit. That's how the demon god emperor could immediately speak out Haoyue's other name, but this 49th ranked demon god of clear vision Crocell couldn't tell it outright. But his engraved instincts were still present. Although he couldn't say Haoyue's identity, he had a deep, threatened feeling that came out, alongside an extremely great fear. Last time, when Long Haochen vanquished the goblin demon god Seer, he immediately had Haoyue transform into armor and merge with his golden foundation armor, but he hadn't had time then to observe Haoyue's changes. He only had felt that Haoyue was a lot more powerful, but giving another look, Haoyue's stature had already surpassed 15 meters, and his aura became more substantial. Faintly, a unique imposing demeanor was coming out from him. Based on Long Haochen's senses, the current Haoyue hadn't yet broken through the 9th step, making him inferior to Haochen, roughly reaching the peak of the 7th step. But his aura at the peak of the 7th step could actually instill such a fear to a powerhouse of the 9th step, such as the demon god of clear vision Crocell. Why was that? Long Haochen tried to ask Haoyue many times about the issue in the past, but the latter avoided the subject every time, sometimes looking clearly at a loss, as if unable to recall it himself. Furthermore, at the time he had followed Long Haochen, he had only one head, and gained his second one with the help from Haochen's blood. How could such a small Haoyue know so many things already? In Long Haochen's guesses, the real threat to the demons was very probably Haoyue's ancestor. And the same goes for the ones from his own world. In other words, Haoyue's species was very strong, and he would definitely keep growing stronger in the future. That's Long Haochen's judgment, therefore making it natural that Haoyue wouldn't know about his own such circumstances. Haoyue now had 5 heads of different elements, being light, fire, wind, water, and poison. Of his 5 heads, Little Light was the central one, its neighboring ones being Little Flame and Little Wind, and the outer ones Little Blue and Little Purple. The 5 heads looked at Crocell with cold gazes, faintly leaking out an aura of hatred. Just like the demons seemed terrified when running into Haoyue, Haoyue showed an intense hate in front of the demon gods. Could they have an innate blood enmity? Long Haochen didn't understand this even one bit. After all, Haoyue wasn't a being from this dimension. So how could he show such hatred to the demon gods? It could be estimated to be a bad compatibility engraved in his genes. On his thick neck Haoyue had another protruding area. This bulge was extremely large, and according to Long Haochen's knowledge, one reaching to this point could break at any time, followed by another evolution from him. Perhaps it would give birth to a 6th head. Haoyue let out another low roar, letting out a dense fighting intent. He was seeking to fight, and wanted to rush straight at Crocell. Of course, Long Haochen didn't let him do that. Haoyue was after all still only at the peak of the 7th step. If the enemy's attack inflicted heavy damage on him, Haochen would regret it greatly. After a short time of soul-bounded communication, Long Haochen soared high, leaving Haoyue's back. Yating still remained at the same area, and started to chant. Long Haochen didn't summon Star King here. The Tower of Eternity was filled with an intense aura of death, and he was unwilling to let it influence him. But was it really that Long Haochen didn't have other forces than Haoyue and Yating at his disposal? Of course not. Although unwilling to utilize this force, he came to have restraining fears after the previous display of strength Crocell showed. Therefore, he didn't dare show any reservations. The effects of teleportation to the Tower of Eternity relaxed Long Haochen greatly. Yet to his surprise, he very rapidly discovered that the deep blue ray adhering to his body hadn't disappeared, but was still entangled with the golden radiance from the Tower of Eternity. A tall silhouette also came to his sight. That teleportation was instantaneous, and it took only a flash for Long Haochen to appear in the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, and along with him was teleported the demon god of clear vision Crocell. Crocell's shock was far greater than Long Haochen's. The instant of the teleportation, he lost control of his innate ability, and was immediately then carried into a spatial transportation that he was unable to resist even at his level of cultivation. At the very moment, he couldn't help but spit a dark blue mouthful of blood. Originally, he was unlikely to suffer great damage, and weakening with the angel demon god Payman's assistance. But during the process of the teleportation, his innate ability was still maintained, and interrupting it was impossible. Its continual use and the spatial travel's influence inflicted on him substantial damage. The stronger an ability gets, the greater the backlash it could carry, just like for a spiritual stove. This demon god of clear vision Crocell's own cultivation was actually insufficient for him to rank among the top 4 to something. The 5 or 6 immediately lower-ranked demon gods were all above him in fighting strength. The reason why he could rank 4 to 9th was his innate ability. Crocell was known as the demon god of clear vision, able to scout out the enemy's true circumstances from a very large range. His magic belonged to the psychic type. At the same time, just like the great majority of the demon gods, he was a dual magic and martial cultivator. Any spell of illusion was useless in front of him. Also, his innate ability wasn't so powerful in itself, but things were different when he teams with other demon gods. This innate ability called Clear Vision's godly pull could, in a certain range, lock his mental force on an opponent, and it had a powerful teleportation effect, able to instantly teleport the target in front of him. In some sense, this Clear Vision's godly pull was a different approach producing the same results as the Saint Spiritual Stove, only far more powerful than the latter. After all, the Saint Spiritual Stove just pulled, whereas the Clear Vision's godly pull was capable of direct teleportation. Just think, if Crocell's teleportation had succeeded, Long Houchen would then be facing the instant surrounding of 8 great demon gods. No matter how gifted he could be, and even if he could unleash his whole strength promptly, and have the defense of his divine tools, the outcome would still be certain death. That's the encirclement of 8 great demon gods, giving one not the slightest chance. Of course, because of Clear Vision's godly pull's power, it has great limitations. Crocell can only use it once a day, and by only relying on his own demon god pillar, regardless of whether it succeeds or fails, it would put him in a very long state of psychic weakness. But that's unless another demon god consents to support him with his own mental force, greatly lessening this backlash. At the same time, Clear Vision's godly pull cannot be used against an enemy with a cultivation or mental force surpassing his own. As long as the enemy's spiritual energy or mental force exceeds his, the odds of success lower greatly. Another restriction is the warning that Qiao Yonghao gave. Clear Vision's godly pull can only be used on one target, so if Long Houchen had grabbed someone else, it would immediately have failed. That's the reason why the angel demon god Paimon released his angel domain, for the sake of covering up the use of his ability. This Clear Vision's godly pull already made the warrior temple suffer large losses. 4 powerhouses at the grade of War Emperor died this way in the demon god's hands. That's why the arrangement of Qiao Yonghao's formation was so tight. The powerhouses from the warrior temple were standing 2 by 2 to avoid leaving Crocell any chance. But Long Houchen was different. He had no prior knowledge of the demon god of Clear Vision Crocell's ability, which is what led to this. Someone walking frequently on the edge of a river has someday to wet his shoes. Crocell walked far too much along night roads, and finally met his nemesis, encountering this time Long Houchen. Long Houchen's natural mental force was exceptional, and far above powerhouses of the same level. But Crocell was after all a demon god of the 9th step, and with his magical attribute being the psychic attribute. As such, Houchen's mental force was still below his. Unless his cultivation breaks through the 9th step, he cannot compete with the demon god of Clear Vision. But that powerful mental force enabled Long Houchen to respond promptly. As the time required for the teleportation increased with the opposing mental force, Long Houchen had at his disposal a few seconds' time, and succeeded in activating the Tower of Eternity in this span. The Tower of Eternity obviously had a greater precedence than Clear Vision's godly pull. How could the demon god of Clear Vision compare to a supradivine tool-ranked existence? Moreover, Long Houchen was its successor, and someone he could count on to bring many more souls. In a time of great danger, this supra-divine tool would obviously come to his rescue. However, as Clear Vision's godly pull was in the end enhanced through the demon god's pillar's power, it also gained fantastic boosts, which is how this strange result happened. The angel of Clear Vision Crocell really managed to teleport Long Houchen in front of him, but at the same time Long Houchen relied on the Tower of Eternity, teleporting the 2 of them here by that way. The 2 teleportations had succeeded, but Long Houchen also escaped mortal peril. What's this place? How did you escape? Crocell was full of doubts and shock. Looking at the opposite Long Houchen, he couldn't help but ask, as in the meantime his hands separated, letting a long blade appear in between them. Black flames lit his long blade, and in the meantime, twisting undulations surrounded visibly Crocell's body. Facing the enemy that had countered his own Clear Vision's godly pull, he was extremely wary. At the time he discovered that Crocell was teleported to the Tower of Eternity alongside him, he was also in great shock. When Crocell asked that question, he drew back very swiftly, then the divine snail shield of sun and moon appeared in front of his chest. Opposite to Crocell's complete reaction of puzzlement, Long Houchen already guessed the truth of the matter from the current situation and the previous circumstances. I didn't escape, but countered your move. Long Houchen replied coldly, and from the powerful aura released by the enemy's body, he could determine that is a demon god. Just before, he seemed to have been beside the demon god leading the enemies. Long Houchen still remembered Crocell's appearance from that time. One could only admit that this demon god had very handsome looks, with the addition of the 6 wings on his back making him look even more captivating. Crocell had already calmed down, and wasn't impatient to attack Long Houchen. It's another space. Since you have the means to teleport here, you must naturally have the means to teleport back. Bring me out, and I'll spare your life. Stalling for time was to his advantage. Crocell was terrified of this space, but being after all a demon god expert at the psychic attribute, he had some understanding of this place. He knew that to be able to go through a spatial travel of this extent, Long Houchen surely had a kind of spatial key. By grabbing that spatial key, he naturally couldn't return back to Xingmordalu. But the most important was the psychic internal injury he had sustained. He couldn't see through Long Houchen, especially after his release of the divine snail shield. With his current injuries, he didn't have the complete confidence of being able to get away in one piece after killing Long Houchen. As such, he spoke to stall for time, and giving himself some time to recover. The enemy was after all only at the 8th step, so he had the full confidence of being able to kill Long Houchen after recovering partly from the psychic internal injury. Back then, the last ranked snake demon god was already as cunning as a fox, to say nothing about the 49th ranked Crocell. Although he still didn't have a domain, his cultivation was thoroughly at the 9th step. Spare my life. What a pity, I have no plans to spare you. Long Houchen ridiculed him. Like Crocell was scheming against him, the same happened on his side. Long Houchen was now extending his senses fully, making an all-out effort to determine Crocell's level of cultivation. The enemy was without a doubt at the 9th step, but great differences existed between different powerhouses of the 9th step. Crocell's previous deep blue spit of blood couldn't be faked, and was a clear proof of wounds. However, Long Houchen didn't know about the intensity of his injury. The inside of the Tower of Eternity was like Long Houchen's main grounds. He was now determining the gap of strength between the two of them, and thus wouldn't rush into battle. In front of Crocell, Long Houchen was disadvantaged in terms of cultivation, but he had his own aspects of superiority. First, he was fully confident in preventing Crocell from connecting with his demon god pillar. A demon god having lost his pillar was like an ordinary powerhouse of the 9th step and no more. Secondly, the enemy was wounded, and no matter to what extent, at least he wasn't in good condition. And from his powerful mental force, his injury should be on the psychic side. Facing a powerhouse of psychic attribute, Long Houchen wasn't afraid in the slightest. Even the 12th ranked emo demon god Sytry had suffered the backlash of her own forbidden spell. In a fight of the 8th step against the 9th step, maybe he could really leave this demon god here forever. Thinking of that, Long Houchen's heartbeat couldn't help but accelerate. Should he fight the demon god in a duel? Although he had killed the goblin knight Seer, both Seer and Andromalius were still demon gods of the 8th step. Although they could temporarily reach the 9th step thanks to their demon god pillars, there was still a difference between the 9th step and that. Can I really win? Long Houchen didn't dare affirm with certainty, but already made his decision to give it a try in any case. Hearing Long Houchen's words, Crocell raised his eyebrows, and contrary to expectations, smiled. Young knight of the 8th step, you're attempting to challenge a mighty opponent of the 9th step. I know what you are thinking, that I can't have the assistance of my demon god pillar here, right? Even so, how could you be a match against me? You have only one option, to serve or to die. Saying that, Crocell raised the long blade in his right hand, and the pitch-black edge of his blade was launched at Long Houchen. This blade wasn't moving very fast, but the instant it struck out, Long Houchen only felt as if locked by Crocell, and couldn't avoid the blow no matter which way he tried to evade. Crocell's eyes had already turned deep blue. The demon god of clear vision was not just talk. In time of battle, his clear vision technique had crucial uses. It was able to create decisive opportunities against the enemy, as well as predict his next moves. Under those conditions, his attacks were undoubtedly very effective. None of the 72 demon gods was a simple character, whether in strength or intelligence. Crocell's attack aimed at intimidating, as well as probing. He was unclear on Long Houchen's precise level of cultivation. Long Houchen drew back slightly, and his body abruptly traced an arc, wielding the divine snail shield of sun and moon with both his arms. A resonant buzzing sound spread out on the whole first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Both Long Houchen's feet slid backwards, only stopping on the edge of the tower. As the divine snail shield spread glitters of intense orange light, Long Houchen's body flashed in light, as the surroundings shook continuously under the flashes of different colors. After bearing this attack, Long Houchen's face was covered in astonishment. Indeed, he sensed that Crocell's internal spiritual energy seemed just above 100,000, definitely not reaching the 2nd rank of the 9th step. But even at such a level of cultivation, relying on divine obstruction actually turned out to be totally insufficient. His body still glowed with the light of bright vengeance, the ability formed along with divine obstruction to reflect some damage back to the enemy, but the soul-binding chain's light also spread. In other words, he had been wounded. Although they weren't deep, despite the divine snail shield's defense and damage sharing with the others, he still sustained some light wounds. From this could be seen the dominance of Crocell's strength. Part 1 end here.